Recording now. Great. Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Sarah, and I am part of the membership team here at Diabetes Australia. It's great to be here for our Health Hour session number 3, Simple Food Swaps, an exclusive event for our United Plus members alongside my colleague, accredited practicing dietitian and health coach consultant, Rebecca McPhee. Now, before we start, just some housekeeping. Today's webinar will be recorded and will be available on Diabetes Connect. If you do not want your face shown, please turn off your camera. You are also encouraged to ask any questions that you have, so please type your questions into the Q&A chat box that's at the top of the screen, or you can come off mute and ask your question. If you are not asking a question, please keep yourself on mute. I think everyone's been admitted, so we can start off. So first of all, I will start with our acknowledgement of country. Diabetes Australia acknowledges Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples as the traditional owners and custodians of this country. We recognise their connection to land, waters, winds and culture. We pay the utmost respect to them, their culture and their elders, past and present. We extend that respect to the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here today. We recognise that Australia is made up of hundreds of different Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander groups, each with their own histories, culture, languages and belief systems. Their relationship with country remains of utmost importance as it is the foundation of culture, family and kinships, songlines and languages. Diabetes Australia is committed to improving health outcomes for all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people affected by diabetes and those at risk. So with that, I will hand over to Rebecca to start tonight's webinar.
Thank you, Sarah, and hello, everyone. Please feel free to show me your lovely face if you want to, because you have to see mine. If you've tuned into one of my webinars before, I like to keep it casual, and as I always say, whilst I've got a presentation to show you, by far, a lot of the experience is on the other side of the screen. You've got years of experience living with diabetes. So please offer your tips. I always learn something from members. And the simple food swaps tonight, you may already know a lot of them, or maybe you know them but need to be reminded to apply it, or maybe there's some other people in your family or friends who might be able to learn from this. And the theme is around carbohydrate management. But I always say this, whilst we are focusing on better blood sugar control, and often that's from carbohydrate management, you may find that your blood sugars are good, maybe you want to lose a bit of weight, or maybe your weight's fine, your sugars are good, but maybe you need to increase your vegetable intake. And the reason why I say this is, whilst we're living with diabetes, we also are at risk of cancer and other chronic diseases. So it's important for us to think about quality, not just about cutting the carbs down, for example, if you have to do it. So you might find from this presentation that it's a way of increasing the colour in your diet, because sometimes people think it's a bit boring, have to put veggies on the plate. There could be ways that you could incorporate that colour in your diet to get more of that fibre and those antioxidants. So hopefully there's something in it for everyone. But Sarah, you can remind me, because I yabber on, and I might need to be reminded that someone asks a question in the chat, because I love to hear your tips and questions. So let's get on with the show with simple food swaps. I'll get Sarah I'll just say next slide. Sarah's being my driver tonight and driving here we go. So the first food swap, and you may already do this, but it's interesting when you look at a lot of recipes that use white flour, it really jacks up the carbs and not a lot of other nutritional value. And whilst white flour can be used in baking and it might be a special occasion, if we're using white flour all the time in our cooking, it really is unnecessarily in terms of the excess carbohydrates. So a really good alternative, and I have trialed and tested this many times, is by using almond flour. And there are a couple of benefits. First, it really reduces the carbs down. Secondly, it's gluten-free, so it's good for people who have a gluten allergy or intolerance. It increases those good fats, because we're not on a no-fat diet, we're on a good fat diet, and it also jacks up the fibre. So here is where you can use it baking, so a baking substitute. So you could use it for pastry. You could use it in muffins and in slices. With crumb foods, think of the homemade chicken nuggets and schnitzel. You can directly swap the breadcrumbs for almond meal. And almond meal has a little sweet taste, but if you use it just a little bit of sea salt and pepper and maybe some herbs, it will have that beautiful flavour. The other thing you can use it for is filler. So if you've got an old-fashioned meatloaf or meat patties or rissoles, we call them, instead of using the breadcrumbs, just swap it for the almond flour. And it tends to be a ratio 1-to-1. If you use coconut flour, some people will use coconut flour. Just be careful, coconut flour is quite dry and it doesn't directly replace, let's say, for example, you're using 1 cup of breadcrumbs. It's not 1 cup of coconut flour, it's significantly less. Whereas 1 cup of almond meal would directly be the same as 1 cup of flour. So you might have to just trial and test it. And I like to look at comparisons. So let's have a look. Plain white flour per 100 grams, you've got 73.2 grams of carbs. But if you've got almond meal per 100 grams, it's only 5.1 grams of carbs. I've also put the protein, because if you've got plain white flour per 100 grams, you've got 10 grams of protein, but almond meal, 20.5 grams of protein. So you're doubling the protein. And with fiber, plain flour per 100 grams is 2.2 grams, but almond meal has 8.9 grams. So you can see that you've got fiber, less carbs, and more protein. That's the first one. Any little questions there? Okay, next one. Oh, Sarah, you're on the ball. Sarah and I have worked for a few years, and it's like we read each other's minds. She's just great. She didn't pay me to say that. So the second one is, and this one's really good because remember I said before, you may not be wanting to really cut carbs, but maybe you want to increase the veg in your diet. Using or making spiralized vegetables instead of pasta. So you can get one of those little curler things, and there are different ways to do it. An old-fashioned way, if you don't have one of those machines, is just to get a what do you call it? A peeler, like a vegetable peeler. Yeah, that's it. I can see one of the lovely. I'm just seeing who's this there. You just helped me with that word, Deb. Thanks, Deb. I read your lips. So with the vegetable peeler, you can peel like carrots, for example, and make ribbons. So you can use it as make spiralized zucchini, carrots, beetroot, or cucumber, and it's great for kids. They love getting involved, and it's a low carb, lower calorie meal. And so, like I said, pasta's not bad, but you might find that you just want to increase the veg and maybe have a couple of pasta-free nights. Or maybe you find that the evening, that's when the portions tend to be bigger, and maybe that's when your blood sugars are a bit higher. That's where you might modify the carbs. I always say this, that diabetes is not a one-size-fits-all. So just think about what would suit you. Let's look at the comparison. Dry pasta per 100 grams, 65.1 grams of carbs. However, zoodles, which is just zucchini noodles, it's only 1.7 grams of carbs. So you can see a massive difference. And if you are using the spiraler, that spiral machine, a really good way to flavour the zoodles is I tend to stir fry it in a bit of olive oil and a little bit of sea salt and pepper, just to give it some flavour. Otherwise, it can be a bit bland. And there's all different things you can do. So that's another option, and that will massively cut down your carbs. The other one is another way of increasing your vegetable intake is swapping potato and rice for cauliflower mash and rice. Has anyone tried that before? Anyone in the group tried the zoodles or the cauliflower mash and rice? Any comments? Because I found it's a bit of trial and error, not with the mash, but with the rice. The first time I did cauli rice, I found it really bland. So what I did was when I made the cauliflower rice, which you just grate in cauliflower, I heated some olive oil in a pan and stir fried the cauliflower rice with a bit of sea salt, pepper, and cumin powder, and it crisped it up and it tastes beautiful. But if you just have cauliflower rice, like grating the cauliflower and just steaming it, it will taste horrible. It will be just bland. Remember, we want food to have flavour, otherwise we're just not going to buy it. You can buy cauliflower rice already made. I've done that once. It was frozen. Or was it fresh? I think I had frozen. Again, when you defrost it, it can be just really watery and bleh. So heat a pan up. Don't be scared of olive oil. Get some olive oil in the pan. Give it flavour. And I was convinced after that. And so let's look at the comparison. If you have cooked cauliflower of 100 grams, it gives you 3.4 grams of carbs per serve. But if you look at potato per 100 grams, it's 12.9 grams. So again, we're really, really reducing the carbohydrate intake for the purpose, like I said before, if you want to increase your veg, and or if you want to cut down the carbs at a certain time of the day to really help those blood sugars, or it might be for weight control. So we know that if your blood sugars are really elevated, our body will produce more insulin, or maybe you have to give yourself more insulin if you're on insulin, and then any excess will be stored as fat if we're not going to use it. So these little swaps can be really, really simple, and maybe pick one at a time and give it a go, rather than feeling like you have to change your whole diet.
Sorry, Beck, just to quickly check, can everyone see the slides that we're presenting from? I've just
That's a
got
good
someone
question.
asking that they can't see it. So I just
Yes.
thought,
Yes.
okay. Okay, there was just someone that couldn't see it, so I just wanted to make sure everyone could see it. And Deb also has a question. Does cooking pasta and
Yes.
cooling it alter the carbs?
Slightly, but it will change the GI. So the most important part about that is it will actually improve the GI or lower the GI. So cooking it and cooling it like potatoes will actually give you a better blood sugar reading compared to if you had it cooked and straight on the plate. The carb amount, I don't think it changes too much, but it's definitely what it does to the body. I can check for you to be sure. But really, it's like if you're using potato in a potato salad, cooling it, you're going to get a better blood sugar reading compared to if you just had straight mash. It's a very good question. I'll write that down. I'm going to have a quick. I will have a little look, and when we finish this presentation, you'll get the slides. We'll send the slides, and also if I'm wrong with that, I'm pretty sure it's similar if you've got cooked pasta, and then if you've got cold pasta, the carbs should be the same. It's the same portion that you're using. It's just the way the body uses it. And again, pasta's low GI. It breaks down to form sugar in the blood very slow. And often people find they can get away with having a bit more pasta compared to something like potato or rice, which tends to be a little bit higher GI, even if you get the low GI variety. And as I said before, you don't have to cut all carbs out. Our family loves pasta, but every now and then I'll get the zoodles on the plate just to get my 4-year-old and my husband eating vegetables. Next slide. This is a really good one, and this one is about a couple of reasons why I put this one in. We all have felt the pinch with the increase in cost in living. So one of the things I'm very passionate about is to cook within the season. So eggplant is a summer vegetable, and if you find it a bit boring, Greek population make beautiful eggplant. So if you've got a Greek background, you're blessed, because the way they cook eggplant is beautiful. And I hadn't really grown up with eggplant until I started experimenting with ways of reducing carbs. And certainly with this lasagna, I came up with a recipe to replace the pasta chips with eggplant, and it's absolutely beautiful. And it's really melt in the mouth, and you don't even know that you're eating eggplant. And again, in season, because eggplant's in season, make it as a summer meal, because it's going to be cheap. Or you could use zucchini. So whenever the eggplant or zucchini is in season, use it. If you're in winter, another thing you could do, it's still carb heavy. You could use sweet potato, but it's increasing the orange color in your diet, antioxidants. Or you could actually use pumpkin, which is less carbs, but again, that orange color, you're getting a good dose of vitamin A. So there's different ways to do it, but let's focus on the eggplant and zucchini slices. So you're having that as replacing the lasagna sheets, and you can have bolognese, tomato sauce in between, or if you want to be veggie, you might just have tomato-based sauce. And I often layer it with other vegetables such as onion and red capsicum and mushroom. And I tend to already roast those and caramelize them a bit with balsamic vinegar. Vinegar also lowers the blood sugars, lowers the GI of a meal. And you can layer all that, and using passata, very cheap. Buy big bottles of passata. When you go to, I'm sure many of you know your local fruit and veg or your greengrocer, especially if it's Italian based, they'll have bottles of passata very, very cheap, and you can get them in the main supermarkets, or you could use tin tomatoes. And those sort of foods, passata and tin tomatoes, are perfect for winter, because tomatoes are going to be more expensive and not be at their nutritional peak. They're a summer vegetable. And then you can use herbs. The other thing I do as a little swap is you could try the pork, chicken, or the turkey mince instead of beef mince to lower the saturated fat. And with that recipe, you can really up your veg intake by a lot, because if you've got onion and mushroom and capsicum and spinach and zucchini and eggplant and tomato and herbs, that's a big way of really increasing your veg intake. Yeah, excellent. So Helen said I mix spinach into the white sauce.
I was just about to say
Excellent.
that, yeah. And also, I think we've got
It's
one.
really good.
Deb mentioned she also grows a lot of her own eggplant and makes moussaka with no pasta.
Moussaka, there you go, Deb. Excellent. Moussaka is absolutely beautiful. If you want, Deb, feel free to send me the recipe. Anyone from tonight, please send me the recipe. I'd love to see it. And I'm going to put it out here. And I think I'm going to put this in the members forum. I write all the monthly meal plans, and we're coming up with recipe books down the track. And I always like a bit of inspiration. So if you have a family favorite recipe that you'd like to share, or if you feel that it's not as healthy as you'd like it to be, make a challenge for me, send it in and see if I can revamp the recipe, and we can add that to our recipe books. So, but moussaka is a beautiful, beautiful recipe. Does anyone grow, like apart from Deb, does anyone grow their own vegetables or herbs? Because herbs are quite expensive in supermarkets. Greengrocers, I find it's about $1 less a bunch from where I am. But fruit and veg, if you can grow, and herbs, grow them yourself, saving a lot of money, and it's that satisfaction of seeing something grow. Anyone grow their own produce? Give people time to put in. Camille. Here's Camille. She's typing in. It's not easy when you've got the harsh climate, Aussie climate too, and it's quite dry. Let's see what Camille's typing. Oh, Camille has a herb garden. Fantastic. Yeah, you save a lot with herbs. And I find that I'll use a bit and then leave it in the fridge, and then I forget about it, and then it wilts. So that's my goal this year is to get back into the garden and grow some more produce. Next slide. And please add any of your own tips as we go along. This is just a menu of options that you can choose from, but anything that you'd like to add, please put in the chat. Sausages, replace sausages for kofta. So sausages, look, it's a good humble meal, but if you're looking to reduce your saturated fat intake and increase your protein, kofta is a great recipe. I've got a chicken kofta recipe that I can provide. So kofta traditionally is made with lamb mince, which is pretty fatty. And that's fine if you're making it now and then, but koftas, we tend to have that a lot in our family because it's like sausages. My 4-year-old finds it easy just to pick it up. And with kofta, I'll use lean pork, chicken, or turkey mince. You could use lean beef mince, but I always like to use something a little different because we use a lot of beef. And if you look at the comparison, sausages per 100 grams, this is just an average beef sausage from the supermarket, 14.5 grams of protein per 100 grams and 8.7 grams of saturated fat. But if you look at chicken mince, it's 19.2 grams of protein and only 1.8 grams of saturated fat. And also from a cost point of view, you can get 500 grams of turkey or chicken or pork mince for $6. And that will make quite a few koftas. Or you could use that, like I said, for a lasagna or a bolognese. And so you're saving money as well. Mince goes a long way, definitely. Anyone else made kofta? And you just need herbs, maybe some cumin powder. It's very easy to make. And then when you form them into little sausages, my little tip is to keep it in the fridge for a couple of hours just to firm up, because the first time I tested my recipe and I cooked it straight in the pan, they just went to mush. Yep. And I ended up making bolognese. So if you fail with the kofta and it mushes in the pan, just stick some passata in it or tinned tomatoes and you can have a bolognese. I don't see any failure in the kitchen. You just have to improvise. Camille's got a question coming. We'll go to the next slide and I'll keep my eye on Camille's question. Oh, that's a great idea, Camille. Wrap the koftas in Glad wrap and partially boil the kofta. That's a great idea. Thank you. That's what yeah, okay. My nan used to do something like that. Okay, yeah. Because then it keeps the shape And then fry them. Yeah, exactly, in olive oil. Love it. See, everyone's got ideas. So the next tip, this is an interesting one. Wrap breads, traditional wrap breads, a bit of a pet hate for me, because over the years when I've seen clients, they'll say, oh, look, I've cut down bread because I'm trying to cut down the carbs, but I'm on the wraps. And visually, they kind of appear to be less in carbs because they're thin, like rice crackers. You think, oh, well, I'm cutting the carbs. It's probably diet food, less in calories. Unfortunately, when you buy a traditional wrap, this is just an average one I chose, a Mission wrap. I just chose one of the popular brands, a wrap about, a normal size. It has about 45.5 grams of carbs per serve, which is the same as 3 slices of bread. So often I've seen people try to cut down the carbs, yet they're replacing it, increasing the carbs, and they should have just gone with a humble slice of bread, which is cheaper, or 1 slice of bread as an open sandwich, or going with a brand such as Bergen, where they tend to be a bit lower in carbs. But if you like your wraps and you can make tortillas, use tortillas or make burritos, if you go for a low carb wrap, you can slash the amount of carbohydrate and also increase the fiber, because a lot of these wraps tend to put the ingredients tend to be a bit higher in fiber. They might use a bit of oat bran or something. So a low carb wrap. This brand's called Simpson's Pantry. I've just gone with anything from Woolies, Coles or IGA because that's where most people shop. And there are lots of different low carb brands, but this one has wraps between 1.2 to 5.9 grams of carbs per wrap. That's a massive saving. So then what you can do is you can focus on the filling. So it's not that carbs are bad. I find wraps are just to hold the ingredient, compared to if you're making a nice rice dish, a pilaf or a nice pasta meal, you really enjoy those carbs. So savor the carbs. If you're just using it to hold your filling, then ditch the traditional carbs, go for a low carb one, and then you can increase your fiber and really reduce those carbohydrates. And there might be a bit of trial and error with some of the brands. But these days, the low carb wraps tend to fold well. They tend to taste pretty good. You can make little pita chips out of them, cut them in triangles and bake them. I find the low carb wraps amazing. Other clients, what they've said they've done is used iceberg lettuce and wrapped their protein in that. You can do that as well. If you want to do, that's sort of more for me, I'd see that as a summer thing, because where I'm at the moment, it's quite hot. And yeah, that iceberg lettuce, nice and crunchy, would be really cooling. But you don't have to cut traditional carbs out altogether. Today we're just about simple swaps. Has anyone tried the low carb wraps, or any tips for them, or any brands that you find that you really like? It's much better than 10 years ago. Oh my goodness, we didn't really have much. We only had mountain bread years ago, and it used to just break. That was the only suggestion I had for patients many years ago. Helen. Yeah, Simpson's ones. Yeah, they're good, aren't they? There's a keto one, so that's why I've put 1.2 to 5.9 grams. So the keto one is 1.2, and then the low carb one is 5.9. And so to put that into perspective, a traditional slice of bread is 15 grams. So you've really slashed the amount of carbs. Next slide. Anyone who knows me or has seen my presentations, they know that I have another pet hate, and that's the cereal aisle in the supermarket. Because first of all, how expensive are they? Like, sometimes I just look and think, because I always avoid it, I usually just buy my oats, and I have a look and think, how expensive are these boxes of cereal? How can anyone afford it? Especially if we have a family. That was nice. That was just a picture of a llama there. Did just seeing if people are paying attention. I used to have a university lecturer who would deliberately do that. You'd be focusing on the presentation, which was really boring and dry, like biochemistry, and then he'd just flash up something random like a llama or a clown, and then everyone go, whoa, and you'd say, oh, right, you are paying attention.
Sorry, I'm trying to share the slides because we have one member that can't view them. And I'm trying to do it discreetly in the background, but I just obviously didn't do it very discreetly.
I wonder if you can email.
Apologies. Yeah,
I wonder if you can email them.
I'm trying to do that in the background, but hopefully I won't interrupt.
Yeah, I'll try to include. And who's this wonderful person who can't see the slides? What is their name?
I think is it Cheryl? Cheryl.
Cheryl, darling. The slides are very, very, very basic. So there's only a couple of words per slide. So you're not missing anything amazing apart from the llama that just flashed up. It's
My desktop,
really,
sorry.
really simple. So my slides tend to be very, very lean. I just have a couple of words so we can focus on the conversation rather than the slides. But
I'll
rest
share them at
assured,
the
you get
end.
these.
I wasn't able
Yeah,
to do it discreetly without interrupting everyone. So I'll
that's
share
right.
them at the end.
Or even in the chat. Maybe she
Yeah.
can. So don't
I was
in the
trying to,
chat.
if I open it, it just interrupts your presentation. So I'll just leave it for the
That's
end.
right. I like to look at a llama now and then. Some cereal swaps. Yes, anyone who knows me knows I do not like the cereal aisle. A lot of it is processed. A lot of it, which is interesting, they take out the fiber and they add fiber and add vitamins and minerals and unnecessary. So if you like to have cereal in the morning, the one that I recommend is oats, good old fashioned oats. Some people don't like oats, and that's absolutely fine. But if you do like a cereal that is high in fiber and low GI, and very, very filling, sticks to your ribs, as my mum would say, especially if it's porridge, go for the steel cut oats. Or oat bran. And the swap is not the instant oats. That tends to be higher GI and it doesn't fill you as much because it's more processed. So the more processed a cereal, the quicker it digests. So go for the steel cut oats. You get them for about $2 a bag. Oat bran is even higher in fiber and you need less of it. And also with mueslis and granolas, there are a few in the supermarket aisle, particularly if you go to IGA, some of the independent stores, they tend to have their own selection of brands, really, really nice artisanal type breads and cereals. You could try or make your own, which I will send to you all as well, my high protein carb smart granola. And one serve of my granola, which is basically oats, almonds, pepitas, so pumpkin seeds. You could use any type of nut. So oats, pepitas, almonds, and then I flavour it with the zest of one orange, cinnamon, and a bit of maple syrup, or you could use honey. Maple syrup is low GI, or you could use a yellow box floral honey, which is low GI. Only 2 to 3 tablespoons per batch, which is nothing. You don't have to use artificial sweeteners. If you're using natural sugars in moderation, it's absolutely fine. So I bake all that and it comes out crispy and delicious. And half a cup of this granola with your Greek yogurt or some milk and a few berries will give you the same amount of protein as 2 large eggs. They're massive. So I had one of the members say, look, I don't eat eggs. I don't eat this. I don't eat that. What's a high protein breakfast? So you can get protein from cereal. The key is the nuts. And I don't add any dried fruit to my granola because you're getting the flavor of it reminds me of Christmas because I'm using cinnamon and orange. And a couple of years ago when I developed this recipe, I used to put it in glass jars with a ribbon and give it to aunts and uncles who'd say, don't buy me any presents. So I'd always make something for them. It's a really, really nice cereal and cheap to make, very cheap to make. And you can experiment with what you want. Some people like to add dried fruit. I tend to not. And then what I do is add the berries at the end. But everyone's different. Anyone have anyone eat cereal in the morning? Do you find your sugars go up when you have it, or have you come up with ways of being able to include a healthy cereal? Maybe you make your own muesli or granola, or maybe you've just decided not to have cereal. Everyone's different. Helen's typing away.
Deb mentioned she makes her own seed and nut granola, but she still finds oats spike her BGL.
Oh, hang on. I can't see her comment. Oh, maybe it's in the
It's in the
Q&A.
Q&A. Yeah.
Oh, apologies. I haven't been seeing that one. I've just looked in the chat. Sorry,
That's okay.
Deb.
I've been
Oh, well
mentioning them.
done, you. Go ahead, Buffett. Yep. So what Deb said, less of the oats, more of the granola with the seeds and nuts, yeah? I'll make a double batch and freeze some. Oh, here we go. Oh no, that's eggplant. I'm just looking through. Oh yes, I make my own seed and nut granola. Yeah, oats for a lot of people will spike it. And so some people just cut oats out entirely. Others will try to make the ratio of oats less than the nuts. Everyone's different. And some people in porridge, some people can't eat porridge. It spikes their sugars. Other people can, especially if you find that you wake up with high fasting blood sugars. and then you feel like you're trying to chase your tail for the morning, people often find they'll keep to something more like an egg-based dish in the morning if the sugars are already spiking, and that's absolutely fine. Again, it's not a one-size-fits-all. Let's see if there's anything in the chat. Oh, yum. So Helen said, I eat a chia seed pudding for breakfast. Delicious. Chia seeds are so high in fiber, lower carbohydrate, and very, very filling. It swells up. Very, very, very nice. That's a great idea. Next slide. Yeah, yogurt swaps. I mean, again, don't you find the dairy aisle just dairy fridge just overwhelming, and there's just so much crazy. Keep it simple, I say. And so if you can tolerate dairy, go for a Greek or natural yogurt. It doesn't have to be any fancy brand. And then you can flavour it yourself, whether you're using cinnamon or a little drizzle of honey. I'd much prefer someone to have Greek yogurt with a bit of cinnamon and a tiny drizzle of honey or maybe some berries, compared to some of those flavoured yogurts or the yogurts where I've got artificial sweetener and everything. So my approach is really whole food. Keep it simple. You don't have to cut anything out of your diet, just modify it depending on your blood sugars and your budget. It also makes a really good sour cream alternative. So if you're making a potato salad, you could use Greek yogurt with a bit of Dijon mustard and lemon. Another thing I do for a sour cream alternative is called my high protein sour cream, and I get cottage cheese, which people tend to go, don't like cottage cheese. You will like cottage cheese if you make this. So basically it's cottage cheese, a little bit of lemon juice, and you get a bar mix, one of those hand blenders, and you blend it up, whiz it up, and it becomes thick like sour cream, and it's really high in protein and really low fat. And I use that as a base for my potato salad, which I tend to make for Christmas because my mum loves potatoes. So I'll do that high protein sour cream. So it's just the cottage cheese and lemon juice, and you just whiz it. And then, depending on your taste, you might add a little bit more liquid for better consistency. Mix it with the potato, and then I put some dill through it, put it on a large platter on a bed of spinach leaves. And then if you want to be a little bit fancy, you can put some smoked salmon on top. I love capers. My family hate anything fishy, so you may not do the capers, but you can see there's so many things you can do with simple swaps and get that flavour. The same with dips. So tzatziki. Tzatziki is a wonderful, cheap dip you can make. You can buy in the supermarket, but look at the ingredients. They tend to have thickeners and all sorts of things. So you're just using cucumber. I don't even traditionally tzatziki, it tends to have the cucumber peeled, and then you take all the moisture out, and then you chop up the cucumber finely. I tend to just chop the whole cucumber, so you're getting the green, you're getting the fibre, and the antioxidants from the cucumber. So you just do cucumber chopped, Greek yogurt, some salt and some lemon juice, a bit of garlic. You can add a bit of dill if you want. And tzatziki, I don't use it as a dip. I use it as an accompaniment to proteins. So when I have kofta, I have tzatziki, or you can use it with chicken or beef. Tzatziki is great on wraps as well. Does anyone else use tzatziki or make tzatziki? It's such a great summer accompaniment and very cheap to make. It's delicious. Or you can have a snack with veggie sticks. Again, another Greek food. Amazing.
So sorry, I was typing it in and I thought, oh no, it's too much to type.
Go for it.
I make tzatziki a powder. So I dehydrate the cucumbers and put all the other herbs and spices with it and make it into a powder. So I can just take a couple of spoons of that and some yogurt, mix it in with some yogurt at any time, and the powder keeps for ages.
That's amazing. Did you just come up with that yourself, or?
I don't know.
Wow.
It's a recipe that I followed.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
that's a great idea.
Yeah, so it's just easy to have it on hand.
Because then I was just going to say, then you've got it on hand. Wow.
Yeah.
Love it. Wow, that's a very good idea. See, learn something new every day. What have we got now? Oh, yes. And the base for salad dressing. So again, Greek yogurt. If you want a creamy dressing, instead of using mayonnaise, I do love mayonnaise, but if you want something different and healthy and high in protein and calcium, I tend to use Greek yogurt bit of lemon juice, maybe a bit of mustard, and that can make a really nice dressing to jazz up those salads. If you find you're getting bored with the same old salad, maybe change the type of dressing you use to really give it flavour. It's the same with hummus. Sometimes I'll use that as a salad dressing, and I'll get 2 tablespoons and then mix a bit of water with it or lemon juice to thin it out, and that's a great salad dressing, or also a great sauce for a stir fry. If you've got veggies, making a veggie and chicken stir fry, for example, a swap, instead of using those horrible jarred sauces, a couple of tablespoons of hummus, mix it through the stir fry, maybe a little bit of water or lemon juice, and you've got yourself a stir fry sauce. Delicious. And it's a great way to use up the leftover hummus. I had a bit of leftover hummus from a barbecue we did on Boxing Day, and so I did it in a stir fry. It was really, really nice. Really, really nice. Next slide. I'm just keeping a check of those questions. Oh, and on cue, ready-made sauces. Another one of my pet hates. Have you seen the aisle with all these sauces? They've got thickeners in it and salt. And the more low-fat a sauce, it tends to be higher in carb and or sodium. They've got to put something in it to give it flavour. So again, we go back to basics. And I've said this in many of my presentations, if you have, if your great-grandmother was here today and opened your pantry and opened your fridge and didn't recognise one of the foods in your pantry or your fridge, then you don't eat it. So we want to go back to whole foods from scratch, because we're going to save money and be much, much healthier. And what happens, I find with my daughter, she's only grown up with basic whole foods, and she can't tolerate a lot of sweet things because she's just used to having homemade sauces. Of course, she has her gelato as a treat on the weekend, and she loves the odd Freddo Frog, but in terms of her palate, doesn't like anything processed, likes things from scratch. Bit of work for mum, but I mean, look, long term, it's important. So here are some swaps. So ditch the tomato sauce, the bottled sauces and dressings, and a couple of ideas can be a tomato salsa you can make yourself with some fresh tomatoes and herbs, a little bit of balsamic vinegar if you want. Tin tomatoes, oh my goodness, it's one of my staples in my pantry. I go through so many tin tomatoes and passata. Hummus, as I mentioned before, vinaigrette. So you could use lemon, lime, or lime juice or vinegar. Now, limes are pretty expensive, and sometimes lemons can be too. So you could use white wine vinegar or apple cider vinegar with olive oil. That is such a basic dressing, but you look at any Italian or Greek household, for example, and they're using salt, olive oil, and vinegar, or lemon or lime juice. Same in Brazil. Many of you already know that using acid in your cooking or in your meals, so vinegar, lemon or lime juice, can lower the blood glucose response after a meal. So isn't it interesting that our ancestors were doing things very, very, very smart, the way cooking has evolved and what our ancestors used to do. Again, I've said before, the Greek yogurt and lemon juice, or Greek yogurt, lemon juice and Dijon mustard makes a beautiful creamy dressing as well, and very, very cheap. Anyone else make up their own dressing? Just having a look through here, or any tips or questions of what you've seen in the supermarket, or maybe, you know, Christmas time we get together and chat to friends and family, and often diet and nutrition comes up on in conversation. It does everywhere. Maybe someone has asked you questions or told you what to do and maybe confused you. That often happens. Everyone's an expert in nutrition, aren't they? Especially when you say diabetes. The number of clients I've had over the years who tell me they get told by people who have no experience, but they think they know what you should do. Any questions or ideas? I'm just having a look down here. I don't want to miss anything. Let's have a look in the chat. Here we go. Having a look up here.
Deb has said to buy lemons and limes when cheap and freeze the juice. It's a great idea.
Yeah, great. Do you use the ice cube trays? Yeah, it's a great idea, isn't it? Then I forget I have them, so I have to remind myself that I've done that before and then gone and bought lemons and thought, oh, I've got them. Yeah, that's a great idea. And I often do that with stock. Sometimes I'll freeze stock as well. Yeah, and tomato paste. If the sachets aren't available, It is cheaper to buy the bottle, but I buy the sachets because it's reduced salt. You can get reduced salt, but you can get the bottle and put them in the ice cube cheese. But you have to cover it up, otherwise it goes all crusty on the top. But it's great ways of budgeting. Yeah, great ways of budgeting. Chip and cracker alternatives. Yeah, look, again, chips are absolutely fine. It's just not every day. So if you like your chips, not a problem. But if you have a bit of a savoury tooth and you're looking at something to snack on in the afternoon or in the evening, for example, the good old plain popcorn, which you buy the corns in a packet. You don't buy all the other brands where they've already done it for you. You just buy the plain corn, put it on the stove like we used to do years ago, or you can do the microwave. I always find I mess it up in the microwave. I find that the stove helps. And that olive oil, I love our olive oil and salt with the corn. You can also have cumin powder. So you can mix olive oil, salt, and then cumin powder. Or you could use chili if you like a bit of bite. Or the Moroccan or Mexican spices work really nicely. Once you've cooked the popcorn with olive oil and salt, mix that through, and you've got that taste that chips provide. Chips provide that crunch and that flavour. Popcorn can do the same, but much less carbohydrate. And what I've done before is I've had those snap block bags and bagged them up in snap block bags, and I've used it for when we were bushwalking with me and my daughter went bushwalking, and we took a little pack. I got her to make it, and she put cinnamon on hers, and we had that as a little bushwalking snack. The other great idea is you can either put in your popcorn about 1/4 cup of toasted or roasted seeds and nuts and mix them in your popcorn. Or you could eat it separately. So the serving of nuts as a snack per day is about 1/4 cup, about 30 grams, 30 to 40 grams. But that roasted flavour of nuts is delicious. But if you find that 1/4 cup doesn't fill you, then add a good cup or two of the plain popcorn. So you're getting that bulk, but you're still not getting too much carbohydrate. And it's just that snacking. Yeah, really, really nice snack. So forget, has anyone been to the cinema lately? I almost fell over when I saw the price of popcorn. I think the food is actually more than the ticket. It's ridiculous. So homemade is best, much, much better. And again, for kids, if you get them involved, really, really, really nice. So any questions or tips or anything that you would like to add, or maybe did you learn something, or you may think, you know, I already knew this, but maybe I just had to be reminded to implement something in my diet, or maybe you have some questions about your blood sugars that aren't going so well, and maybe you're looking for a food substitute and you're not sure. You can either ask me, or the group also has ideas. So we put our heads together and help each other. We've got Rose here typing. And Camille, we've got a few people typing. This is great. Let's have a look. I should do elevator music while I'm waiting. New substitutes to try. Thank you. Oh, my pleasure, Rose. My pleasure. Sometimes you just need reminding. Like now and then I think, oh, I've got to get that spiralizer out and do zoodles. And once I get my daughter involved, she absolutely loves it. My husband doesn't like it, but then when he sees my daughter get excited, then he goes, oh, yeah, that's fine. So she sells it to him. Good question, Helen. Full cream or low-fat dairy is better? It's a really good question. Look, the recommendations for dairy, if there's a history of heart disease, we normally suggest reduce fat. However, if there's no history of heart disease, cholesterol's fine, then full fat is okay, and weight management's okay. Also for diabetes, we tend to say there is a risk of heart disease, go for reduced fat. But I'm of the belief that you might do half and half. So, for example, you might have a reduced fat milk, but do a full fat cheese. I really don't believe in reduced fat cheese. It's really high in salt, doesn't taste nice. So you might have a bit of a mix. What we're trying to do is keep the whole diet, the level of saturated fat to not too high. So if you prefer the taste of full cream milk and don't have a lot, then that's absolutely fine. Or if you find you have quite a lot of milk in your diet, and there is a history of heart disease, maybe go for reduced fat. Some clients I've found they've just been on skim or light their whole life, that they just used to the taste. That's fine. Same with the yogurt. Reduced fat, I don't see much of a difference in taste than the full fat. But again, It's what suits your taste and how much you eat of it. But the cheese, just go for normal cheese and watch the portion. Forget the light cheeses. My pleasure. My pleasure. Always remember, once they reduce something in the food, they're going to increase it with something else. And it's either sweeteners, thickeners. Is oat milk an okay substitute for milk? Good question, Camille. Look, oat milk, if you've got a lactose intolerance or an allergy, then yeah, look for something that suits you. But oat milk, unfortunately, when you look at the label, they tend to have a lot of things added to it. So it's a small percentage of milk, a bit of water, and they'll probably fortify it a lot. So it's not the ideal, but if it helps you to eat a really healthy cereal, then that's okay. Milk is obviously number one when it comes to protein, as is soy milk. And then after that, almond and oat milk are kind of on par. So it's okay if you find you can't tolerate dairy. It's okay. And then, you know, coffees, I actually like an oat milk latte is actually quite nice. One of the baristas accidentally made me an oat milk one. It was the wrong order. And I said, oh, look, I'll try it. And it's actually quite nice. But again, just be careful of those plant milks when you look at the label. It tends to be a very small percentage of almonds or oats and then everything else added to it. But again, I'm not sure of your situation, but if it's the only thing you can really drink and it helps you to have a healthy diet in terms of a good cereal, or you have that with your coffee, absolutely fine. Absolutely fine. It's there for a reason. Some people tolerate that better. Yep. Any other questions? Let's have a look. Oh, Q&A, there's a red dot there. So does that mean there's another question? Is butter okay? Absolutely, Deb. Do you know what? I'm just going to say, so look, butter is natural. Is it high in saturated fat? Yes. Is that a problem? Well, yes, if you eat a pound a day, but you're not. So if you're having a smear on some good quality sourdough toast, it's absolutely fine. Rather than going for margarines, yeah, it's natural and not a problem. Some people have margarines because they're trying to lower their cholesterol. They can work, but you need to have at least 2 tablespoons a day, which is quite a lot, and it doesn't taste very nice. So there are other ways of lowering your cholesterol. One of my future meal plans will be on healthy heart, so keep ahead of that. And some people can't get their cholesterol down because it's genetic. It's not always diet. So a wee bit of butter is absolutely fine. Portion caution, but I love butter. It's delicious. And there are other spread alternatives. You might try butter one day and then maybe avocado or hummus, but butter is not a problem. Not a problem. I was very lucky when I was in the UK in July and August to have some really good quality butter. It was very, very nice. And cheese. But they say the French paradox, have a glass of red and then it helps. But it's all moderation. It really is. So everything's fine unless you have an allergy or intolerance. You don't have to avoid anything. It's just how much of it we eat. It's all about balance, which I'm sure your grandmothers and grandfathers taught you. Oh, good question, Lisa. Is sourdough better than other types of bread like rye? Technically, like a traditional sourdough is lower GI than rye, but you can get a sourdough rye, which is low GI. But rye, a proper artisanal rye bread is very, very good. I recommend it. It's really high in fibre. But again, it's about medium GI. But then a sourdough rye is low GI. But traditional sourdough doesn't have to be whole grain. It can be a white sourdough because that fermentation method is what lowers the GI. So not a problem. Sourdough is on my yes list when it comes to swaps. So the best breads are sourdough, a good traditional rye, or you can have the like a granary multigrain, those, and pumpernickel. Pumpernickel's really good too. And it's so dense. You have one thin slice of pumpernickel with a little bit of cheese. It's a very filling snack, and you're having just something very small. But sourdough's great. Thanks, ladies, for the info. Have a great evening. Thank you, Petra. Other questions? I find with sourdough, it's sometimes hard if the bakery doesn't slice it, because then I tend to slice them unevenly. So I try to go somewhere where they slice it, so then and then I'll freeze them and take one out all the time because we don't go through it big enough. Yeah. Any other questions or tips? Thanks for tuning in the evening too. It's not easy for everyone to tune in at night. Let's have a look. I'm having a look at any other comments or questions.
Can I just ask a question?
Oh, please, Deb, go away. Go ahead.
I go away, yeah.
It's late.
Yeah, I know. No, it's not as late there as it is here. I find it. I'm a type 1 diabetic, and I find the balance between trying to eat low carb and still enjoy food.
Yep.
And I'm insulin resistant in the morning, and that's why I get the spikes after breakfast. But the rest of the day, it's great. And my insulin intake is good. My ratio is good, but it's just finding that balance between, you know, every time I hear the word carb, I get anxious.
Of course.
Because I know that it, you know, for me, carb equals insulin intake. So yeah, I don't know how to relax into that whole. Yes, I can enjoy carbs in moderation.
So you said in the morning you're insulin resistant, so that I can see why you'll probably go for more of a lower carb meal. But are you eating enough carb in the day to be able to enjoy it, or is that where you're finding it hard in terms of in the rest of the day you're modifying the carbs to minimize the blood sugars, but then you're not having that enjoyment? Is that?
I'm always very conscious of how much carb I'm taking because I'm eating, because I want to use the minimum amount of insulin that I can.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah. So I don't want to eat up to my insulin intake.
Yep. Okay. Do you feel that you're having enough carb in the day to be satisfied in terms of hunger?
Yeah, most of the time. Yeah. Yeah.
So do you think it's more of a mindset in terms of your approach to carbohydrate management as opposed to physically?
Actual. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. So
Okay.
if I'm going out, if I'm eating out, and you know, I almost just automatically go to a salad with no dressing because there's, you know, so many hidden carbs, and I just find it does my head in trying to then dose for what I don't know is there.
Yes, and then there's a worry of hypos. Did I overestimate, underestimate, or whatever? So, when you think of carb, what comes to your mind straight away? Carbohydrates.
As in what type? What food?
In your mind? No. When I say the word carbohydrates, how do you react, and what's in your head? What is your reaction? What do you say to yourself when you read the word carb or people talk?
Eat as little as possible. Yeah.
Okay, so there you go. So it's basically, and I've done this in previous presentations, that it's what we're saying to ourselves. We're our own worst enemy. It's our thinking that gets in the way, not knowledge, not anything else. So given that you said what you're eating is enough, it's just what you're saying to yourself, and it may be the approach when you go out to say something different so you can enjoy. There might be two things, maybe a habit change in terms of researching the restaurant before you go, or looking on one of the apps to make sure you're sorted. But also it might be that thinking strategy of what do I need to say to myself to reassure myself that I am allowed to eat carbs. But it's how can you see carbs in a different way? Given that you're very knowledgeable and you're controlling it in the day, how would you like to see carbohydrates?
Just as part of my normal diet, and I do, to a degree. It's that I have to be aware of how much carbohydrate is in anything that I eat. I don't have that option to not be, or to have a day off, or you know,
there's no day off for diabetes.
No.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I just like to be more relaxed about it.
So what could you do to be more relaxed? Because I can see it's very all or nothing. It's either cut the carbs out or forget it altogether. And we can't forget, I mean, type 1 diabetes, you'd be in hospital like that if we did. So how can you have that more shades of a grey? And it does take time and practice to change how we think about something. And it may be before you're going to see an endocrinologist. I've had clients freak out before they see the endo because they're going to get a wrap over the knuckles. It's just, how can you interpret things differently, given we can't change the fact you got type 1 diabetes, but you're knowledgeable. And sometimes it's reminding yourself that I know what I'm doing and I'm going to enjoy this meal, because carbs is just a word. It's food and nourishment. Carbs do other things for us. You've got a wonderful garden. It's about healthy living. It's about nutrition, about nourishing. So think of the other words, given that you're sorted in the day. It's just how you change the way you think. And it takes quite a few weeks to change how we approach something. So we're not ignoring the fact that you have to know about grams of carbs. Absolutely. It's just, I mean, you know, the way we used to teach diabetes years ago was pretty strict because we didn't know as much. And we're also fearful if you're walking out of a Daphne session hypo. So we sort of drum into, you know, you've got to count your carbs and hyper management. But at the end of the day, like I said at the start of the session, this is not just about food swaps for carb management. This is about increasing your veg. This is about being healthy and nourished to prevent cancer, to prevent other chronic diseases. Yeah. So have a think about carbs, how you could replace that word. What could carbs do for you to reduce that anxiety? Because we know stress will get up the sugars, increase the sugars as well. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Thank you. Yes.
No, my pleasure. And then when you're going out, you might be saying, I've got this. I've got an estimate in my mind and I'm going to give it a go. Yeah. And then when we track how we think every day and practice, it will just become automatic, an automatically positive thought as opposed to an automatically negative thought.
Yeah. Right. Thank you.
My pleasure. Is there any possibility of having a session sometime in the future about suggestions for people with gluten intolerance? Yeah, the almond flour are great, but most of the suggestions are for a gluten-free diet. Yeah, absolutely, Cheryl. So thank you for your suggestion. A lot of the recipes I come up with are gluten-free, unless it's something that's, you know, like a piece of sourdough. So definitely we can put that in as a suggestion, gluten-free alternative. So thank you. Absolutely. Any other questions? Oh, we've just gone over 8 o'clock. I think that's it. You know what I might do as well for Cheryl, with that presentation, I might also come up with some gluten-free alternatives for each of those 10 tips. And I'll send it to you soon.
I'm not able to share. I was just trying to share the presentation, but it doesn't give me the option here. So we'd have to just, this will be filmed as mentioned and it'll be available on Diabetes Connect. So you'll have the slides and everything there.
Yep, and then I'll have a gluten-free version. So Cheryl doesn't miss out.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Rebecca, and all of you for taking the time to attend today's event and asking all your questions. And as mentioned, this has been filmed, so we'll be adding it onto Diabetes Connect. The United Health Hour sessions are part of the member benefits, so we'd love all of your feedback. So if you have a spare moment, I'm just about to pop a link in the chat. So if you could please, if you have some moment, fill out the survey with any kind of feedback at all. That can help us evolve all of these sessions that we have. Thank you. See you all soon.
Thank you, everyone.
Hopefully.
See you next time. And thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.